Smoke filled the sky as the battle on planet Uranus came to a brutal end. The ground was covered with broken machines, blood, and fire. The silence was heavy, the kind of silence that follows after death. Ethan Knight, a human soldier, dragged his injured leg through the ruins of a crashed base. His suit was torn, one eye swollen shut, and blood ran down his arm. He had been fighting for hours, maybe days. He didn't remember the last time he had slept or eaten, but he had one thing left: anger. He had seen his team die one by one, killed by the enemy, by her. He stopped near a half-destroyed wall and checked his weapon. The plasma rifle had only one shot left. He didn't care. He wasn't planning to leave this place alive, not without taking her with him. She's close, he whispered, listening to the echo in his helmet. Her footsteps were light, quiet, but his ears were sharp now. She had attacked them from the shadows, quick and deadly. A Zephyrian, tall, glowing skin, eyes like ice, alien and terrifying, but now she was injured too. He had hit her during the last fight, and she had disappeared into the lab ruins. He followed her trail, leaving behind his fear and mercy. The lab was silent, cold, and broken. Walls cracked, machines burnt, lights flickering. He walked deeper, gun ready. Every step slow and careful, and then he saw her, Sarah, the alien girl who had haunted his nightmares. She sat against the wall, breathing heavily, one hand pressed to her side. Her purple blood stained the floor. Ethan raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. Sarah looked up, eyes narrowing. Even wounded, she looked dangerous. But she didn't move. Maybe she knew it was over. You killed them, Ethan growled. Sarah blinked slowly. You started the war, she replied, voice cold but weak. I don't care, he said, aiming. He hesitated for a second, just a second, and in that second, the ground shook. A warning light flashed, and the old lab gave a loud crack. The floor beneath them split, and both of them fell. They landed hard inside a strange round chamber. A metallic pod, large enough for two. The door above them slammed shut, sealing tight. A robotic voice echoed. Healing sequence initiated. No, Ethan shouted. Crawling toward the door, Sarah tried to get up, but the pod sprayed a blue mist. They both fell back, eyes wide as light surrounded them. Suddenly, pain rushed through Ethan's head. But it wasn't his pain, it was hers. Memories flashed before his eyes. A small Zephyrian child running through golden fields. A family smiling, laughter, then war, screams, explosions. He gasped and looked at Sarah. She clutched her head, crying out. She's seeing my memories, he thought in shock. The pod wasn't just healing, it was bonding them. The machine connected their minds, their feelings, their truths, and in that moment, Ethan understood. She wasn't a monster, she was scared, broken, just like him. He tried to speak, but the pod held him still. It was forcing them to sink, to understand, to feel. Then, everything went dark, silence again, but this time inside the mind, two hearts beating slowly. Not as enemies, but something else, something new. Time passed, but they didn't know how much. When the lights came back, they were lying side by side, neither moved, both breathing slow and deep. Ethan opened his eyes. He didn't feel hate anymore. He felt confusion, sadness, curiosity. He turned to Sarah. She was already looking at him. Why are we still alive? He asked. Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, this pod was made for peace. Ethan didn't know what that meant, but he knew one thing. He would never look at her the same way again. The enemy he hated, the girl he wanted to kill, was now connected to him. The door of the pod started to unlock with a hiss. Outside, alarms began to sound, but inside, something had already changed forever. And the war was no longer just between humans and aliens. Now it was a war inside their own hearts. Ethan woke up screaming. But the scream wasn't his own. It was hers. A voice full of fear, pain, and memories that didn't belong to him. His heart pounded like a drum in a storm. He sat up fast. breath shaking, eyes wide. The pod was still sealed, glowing softly in blue and silver light. And right across from him, Sarah, the alien girl, the enemy. She was unconscious, her face twisted in fear. Like she was trapped in a nightmare. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. But it wasn't just sweat. It was something more. His hands trembled, his chest felt tight. He wasn't just seeing her memories anymore. He was feeling them. A moment ago, he saw a burning forest, a child crying for her mother, flames all around, and silver ships in the sky. Ships that looked human. Ethan stood up slowly, legs still weak. His wounds were healing. The pod was doing its job, but now it was healing both as one wound, two bodies. One heartbeat shared across two minds. "Wake up," he whispered, gently shaking her arm. Sarah's eyes opened fast, glowing in the dark like stars. For a second, she looked terrified, then confused, then angry. "You're in my mind," she said in a voice filled with rage. "You're in mine," Ethan replied, stepping back. They stared at each other, breathing heavily. The silence felt loud, filled with everything unspoken. Sarah touched her chest. "I felt your sadness," she said, voice shaking. "The boy. The one you called James. He was your brother." Ethan's fists clenched. "I saw your mother die," he said quietly. "She was just trying to protect you." Neither of them spoke for a while. The pod hummed softly, glowing like a heartbeat. It was alive, and it was watching them. "We need to break the bond," Sarah said, standing slowly. "This is unnatural." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Everything about this war is unnatural. You kill us, we kill you, and none of us even know why." "I know why," Sarah said, turning to him. "You invaded our galaxy." "No," Ethan said, stepping closer. "We were told you attacked first." Both looked at each other, eyes narrowing again. The hate still lived inside, but now it had cracks. Cracks filled with shared memories. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. The pod spoke. "Stage 2 of the bond is complete. Host connection has reached 40%, Ethan." And Sarah both stepped back. "What does that mean?" she asked. Ethan checked the side panel, trying to read the alien text. But it was useless, too advanced. "I think it means we're not done bonding," he said, voice dry. They looked up as the pod changed colors, glowing now with a soft gold hue, and with it, something strange happened. Ethan felt calm, not his calm, her calm. He looked at her and felt warm, and she looked at him and flinched. "You feel what I feel," she whispered. "That's not safe." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe not," he said. "But maybe it's the only way we'll ever understand each other." Suddenly, loud thuds echoed outside the pod. Both of them froze. Footsteps, many, marching. Sarah pressed her ear to the pod wall. "There's Zephyrian soldiers," she whispered. "They must think I'm dead." Ethan listened too. Then his eyes widened. "No, they're human," he said, voice low. "They're from my side." They stared at each other. Both sides were here. "And if either one opened that pod, they'd only see an enemy. They'll kill you," Sarah said. "And they'll think I've been brainwashed," Ethan added. "We can't go out." She said. "We won't survive," Ethan replied. Another voice echoed from the pod speaker. "Warning, connection approaching 60%. Mind fusion may become permanent." Sarah looked terrified. "If this goes too far, we won't be able to separate." Ethan felt his throat go dry. He never imagined dying this way, connected to the enemy. And worse, he didn't know if he wanted to break the bond anymore. He was seeing the war from her side. He was feeling her pain, her love, her fear. And inside his own heart, something was changing. Not just understanding, but belonging. Sarah leaned back against the wall, breathing heavy. Ethan did the same, both staring at the ceiling of the pod. "I used to dream of killing your kind," Ethan whispered. Sarah nodded. "I used to dream of burning your cities." "And now?" he asked. She closed her eyes. "Now, I just want this pain to stop." The pod lights dimmed again. Their bond grew deeper, stronger, and outside, their enemies waited, unknowing that the war they believed in was already crumbling from inside a healing pod. It wasn't a sound that woke Ethan. It was a feeling, like someone was watching from inside his own mind. He opened his eyes and saw Sarah already staring at him. But her face wasn't angry anymore. It was full of questions. The pod was still, sealed tight, but the air felt heavier. The machine had stopped humming, and the light had dimmed. They both felt it. Something had changed between them during the night. Something permanent. Sarah stood slowly, stretching like she hadn't moved in hours. Her glowing eyes no longer looked like a weapon. Now they looked like a mirror. She could see him, and he could see her. Beyond the war, beyond the hate. We can't stay in here forever, Ethan said quietly. Outside, both our people are waiting to kill us. Sarah nodded. The bond is almost complete. If we break it now, we may both suffer. Ethan gave a half laugh. So we're trapped between death on the outside and madness on the inside. Sarah looked at the control panel on the pod wall. It was never meant to bond enemies, she said. This tech is old, from the time of the first peace. The what? Ethan asked, stepping closer. She touched a symbol on the panel. It means there was a time long ago when humans and Zephyrians worked together. But something or someone broke that alliance, Ethan frowned. That's not in any Earth history, and we've never been told about it either, Sarah replied. Maybe that's the point. They both stood there, in silence again, not because they hated each other, but because their minds were spinning. The war they had been fighting, bleeding for, killing for, might have been built on lies. Then Ethan broke the silence. We can't survive out there unless we work together. Sarah turned her head sharply. You want a deal? I want a truce, he said. Until we figure out what this bond really is. She narrowed her eyes. And then what? Then we decide what to do, he answered. Together. It was a risky offer a few hours ago. She would have snapped his neck without hesitation. But now, she felt his thoughts, his fear, his truth. And he felt hers. There was no room left for lies. She stepped forward and extended her hand. A slow, ancient gesture of peace. Ethan stared at it, then took it. Their fingers touched, and the pod responded. Agreement detected, the voice said. Opening external protocols. A side panel opened with a hiss, revealing old data modules. Ethan picked one up, dust flying off. What's this? Sarah smiled faintly. Answers. They inserted the module into a projector slot. A hologram flickered to life, a recording. A human and a Zephyrian standing side by side. Smiling, laughing, the human man said, This alliance will change the galaxy. The Zephyrian woman replied, As long as no one fears the bond. But the video cut off, burned out midway. Someone had erased the rest. Ethan looked at Sarah. We were meant to be allies, he said, voice tight. Not enemies. They didn't want us to know, she whispered. Someone wanted us to hate each other. Suddenly, a loud clang hit the outside of the pod. They both froze. More clangs followed, metallic, sharp, close. Then a voice, Ethan Knight, this is Commander Rowe. You're surrounded, and we're cutting this pod open. Ethan's eyes went wide. They found us, he said. Sarah backed up. If they see me in here, they'll shoot. No, Ethan said firmly. They'll shoot us both. Another clang closer. Then sparks flew from the roof of the pod. We don't have time, Sarah said. If you trust me, we escape now. Ethan hesitated. His team was out there. His people, but so was death. He looked at her, his enemy, now connected to his thoughts. I trust you, he said at last. Sarah moved fast, opening the emergency panel under the floor. A narrow maintenance tunnel led into darkness. They slipped inside just as the pod hatch burst open behind them. They crawled for several minutes, then dropped into a dark tunnel far from the surface. Their breathing echoed off the metal walls. The war above them raged on, but below the ground, Something far more dangerous had just begun. A human and alien, enemies by birth, allies by force, now bonded by something no one understood yet, and for the first time, they weren't just running for survival. They were running to find the truth. The first thing Ethan heard was his own name whispered by a voice that wasn't human. It echoed in his head like a memory from a dream. But when he turned, no one was there, just shadows, cold air, and Sarah beside him, her eyes wide with fear. They were deep underground now, in the tunnels beneath the destroyed lab. These halls hadn't seen light in years. Metal walls were rusted, pipes hissed softly, and the air smelled like damp dust and old war. Ethan checked the motion scanner he found in the pod's emergency pack. 3 signals moved above them, human soldiers, but not friendly. They were searching for him, and they weren't alone. Sarah crouched beside a half-collapsed doorway, her fingers brushing strange alien symbols carved into the wall. These tunnels were used during the First Alliance, she said, her voice barely above a breath. Before the war, before everything burned. Ethan leaned beside her, rifle gripped in his hands. I thought tunnels like this were just myths. He said, old war stories, not myths, Sarah replied, her voice sharp, buried truths. They moved carefully, deeper into the dark. Their shared bond made silence unnecessary. They could feel each other's fear, their thoughts, like quiet messages between pulses. But something new was creeping into that connection. Not just thoughts, instincts, reflexes. Ethan moved, and she anticipated it. Sarah turned, and Ethan followed without asking why. It was like their minds were learning to fight together. But time was not on their side. Outside, 2 search teams were closing in, 1 human, 1 Zephyrian. Both had the same mission. Kill the traitors. Ethan stopped near an old console. Brushing off the dust, he powered it up, and a map blinked to life. There was a transport tunnel, one that led to a neutral zone, long abandoned. Maybe we can lose them in the old trade station, he said. Sarah nodded, but as they turned to move, her breath caught. Ethan spun, weapon raised, but it was too late. A sharp blue light hit the wall beside them. They dove behind cover as energy bolts lit up the hallway. Zephyrian soldiers, 3 of them, wearing hunter suits. Sarah recognized them instantly. These are bond breakers, she said with a tremble in her voice. They were trained to destroy pairs like us. Ethan's heart dropped. They've seen us? Worse, Sarah whispered. They felt us. The bond made them visible, not to eyes, but to sensors tracking emotion, rage, panic, desperation. The bond burned hot, and these soldiers were drawn to it like wolves to blood. They ran, side by side, deeper into the maze of tunnels. The hunters followed without sound, like shadows with teeth, each second. Ethan and Sarah felt the bond pulse harder. They weren't just thinking alike, they were feeling everything as one. Sarah suddenly cried out and dropped to her knees. A wave of pain shot through Ethan's chest. He fell beside her. There, minds flashing again, more memories, not their own. Visions of a room, a dark council, and a child, half human, half Zephyrian, watching from the shadows, watching them. What was that? Ethan gasped. Sarah looked pale. I don't know, she said. But someone is inside the bond. They forced themselves up and moved again. The trade station was ahead, huge doors sealed shut, but ancient overrides still worked. Ethan slammed his hand against the panel. The doors opened with a long, painful groan. Inside, the space was wide, silent, and filled with old ships and supplies long forgotten. But they weren't alone. A machine stood in the center, tall, humanoid, glowing with soft orange light. Sarah froze. I know what this is, she said. It's a peacekeeper AI. The machine turned toward them, its voice calm and deep. Bonded pair detected, it said. Welcome. Ethan stepped forward. Who are you? I am Keeper 9, the machine said. Guardian of the Alliance Archive. We need help, Sarah said quickly. Both our armies are hunting us. You are no longer part of their war, the AI replied. You are part of something. Older. Suddenly, alarms blared again. The hunters had breached the tunnel behind them, and from the other side, human soldiers entered the chamber. Both enemies, both aiming weapons. Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm. "We're out of time," she said. Ethan turned to the eye. "Is there a way out?" The eye paused, then stepped aside, revealing a hidden tunnel. "Escape leads deeper into forgotten space," it said. "But only if your bond survives what comes next." The soldiers raised their weapons, shouting. The hunters charged forward. Without a sound, Ethan and Sarah didn't wait. They ran into the dark, into the unknown. Together, behind them, the galaxy still believed they were enemies. But inside that darkness, something new was growing. Not just survival, not just trust, but a spark that might change everything, if it lived long enough to be understood. The stars looked different when you knew you were being hunted by your own kind. Ethan stood at the edge of the old satellite bridge, staring through the cracked glass window into space. It should have been beautiful, peaceful, but all he saw were lies floating in the dark. Sarah stood behind him, silent. She didn't need to speak. He could feel her thoughts now. Not just fear, but exhaustion, confusion, and a growing question neither of them wanted to ask. What if everything we believed was false? The trade station they'd escaped to was ancient, forgotten by both human and Zephyrian history. But deep inside its heart, they had found something more than shelter. They had found records, fragments of the past, hidden truths locked away in corrupted data drives. The Peacekeeper AI, Keeper 9, stood beside them, scanning and restoring what it could. These archives were erased during the collapse. It said calmly, "But some truth still survives." A soft hum filled the room, and a flickering hologram lit the chamber. An old video, grainy but real. A human and a Zephyrian commander stood side by side on a balcony above a cheering crowd. Children from both species stood hand in hand. Behind them, a banner waved. The Unity Accord. Ethan's mouth went dry. "That's Earth's ambassador," he whispered. "He died. Or we thought he did." Sarah stepped closer, eyes wide, and the Zephyrian beside him. "That's my grandmother." They turned to each other. Both had grown up learning these two races were born enemies. But now the truth screamed otherwise. Once, they had stood united. What happened? Keeper 9 answered before they could ask. There was a third party, it said, unseen, manipulating both sides. A new screen appeared, showing blurry footage, attacks on Zephyrian cities, then human ships exploding in orbit, the same symbols, the same pattern, too clean to be random, too perfect to be war. Someone wanted the Unity Accord to fail, Keeper 9 explained. They used mimic ships, false signals, and deepfake broadcasts. Ethan clenched his fists. My brother died believing the enemy killed his squad. And I lost my mother to a strike we thought was human, Sarah said softly. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. The bond between them pulsed hard. They could feel each other's grief now, raw and unfiltered. It wasn't weakness anymore, it was strength. Shared pain, shared loss, shared purpose. I don't think we were meant to find this place, Ethan said. No, Sarah replied, but maybe the bond led us here for a reason. Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashing across the station walls. Keeper 9's voice grew sharp. Alert! Unauthorized signal detected. The screen lit up. A live feed, a stealth ship, human design. Approaching fast. And then, another Zephyrian markings. Ethan's heart dropped. They found us. Sarah looked at the data core still downloading. We need that truth, she said. If we can share it with both sides, maybe the war can stop. Or maybe they'll kill us before it even uploads. Ethan replied. They both stared at the screen. Two warships from two different worlds, heading straight for them with the same goal. Erase the bond. The Peacekeeper AI stepped forward. There's one last option, it said. There is a relay satellite near this station, old but powerful. If we reach it and upload the archive data, the message will spread across both empires. But the relay is outside, Ethan said, looking at the broken exterior of the station. No cover, no airlocks. You'll have 4 minutes. Keeper 9 replied, before the ships reach. Firing range, Sarah stepped forward, already pulling on the emergency suit. I'll go, she said. Ethan grabbed her arm. No, he said firmly. We go together. They suited up in silence, one last mission, not to fight, not to kill, but to show the galaxy the truth, buried in lies, sealed in silence, hidden in the stars. The moment they stepped into the airlock, the bond flared again. But this time, it wasn't pain or confusion, it was clarity. They weren't just connected. They were aligned, 2 enemies, now moving like one, 2 voices, 1 message, 2 souls, 1 purpose. They launched into space, aiming for the relay. Behind them, the war followed, but ahead of them, the truth waited. Asterisk space had never felt so loud. It didn't roar like thunder. It didn't scream like war. It whispered. Pressure against your suit, silence inside your mind. And that silence was louder than any battlefield Ethan had ever stood on. He floated, tethered by only a thin cable and a dying hope. The relay satellite, ancient, rusted, forgotten, spun slowly in front of him like a sleeping giant. It was their last chance. If it didn't work, everything they had suffered would be buried again, lost forever in the cold between stars. Sarah moved beside him with perfect precision. They didn't need to speak. The bond guided their movements now, like music without sound. He reached for the power core. She unlocked the data feed. Together, they worked like one machine. Human hands, alien mind, 1 heartbeat. Inside the station, Keeper 9 monitored their progress. Upload ready, relay sync in progress, the AI reported. Enemy ships closing in, 60 seconds to firing range. Ethan swallowed hard. His suit was leaking oxygen, but he didn't tell Sarah. He could feel her worry through the bond. And that was enough. I can do it, she said through the comms. No, he replied instantly. We finish this together. The screen on the relay blinked, yellow, then green. Sarah inserted the crystal drive from the Peacekeeper archives. Light pulsed through the satellite like blood through veins. The truth was alive again. Images filled the screen. The broken alliance, the hidden third faction, the lies that fueled the war, names, dates. Proof, undeniable, uncheckable, unstoppable. Upload at 62%, Keeper 9 said. Target lock detected. Human warship preparing to fire. Sarah stared at the Earthship moving into position. They'll destroy the relay, she whispered. They don't want the truth to spread. Ethan stared at it too. He recognized the ship. It belonged to Commander Rowe, his former leader, the man who had told him the Zephyrians were monsters, the man who gave the order that killed his squad. Now, Rowe was about to erase the truth, just like he erased the past. Upload at 88%. The II said, Zephyrian hunter ship charging primary cannon. Sarah's voice was cold and steady. They're working together. Ethan nodded slowly. Enemies with a shared secret. Their bond pulsed again, not with fear this time. With determination. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They finished. Upload complete. Keeper 9 announced, broadcasting across Alliance channels, civilian nets, and deep archive networks. A soft hum echoed across the stars. Then silence, followed by a pulse, then another, and then voices, thousands of them, across human colonies, Zephyrian cities, border worlds, forgotten outposts. People watched, listened, cried, as truth reached them. But victory had a price. The Earthship fired, so did the Zephyrian hunters. The relay exploded in a blinding wave of light. Ethan and Sarah were thrown away from it, spinning in zero gravity. The tethers snapped. His suit alarm screamed. Oxygen failure. Sarah tried to reach for him, but her arm didn't move fast enough. Ethan felt his body go cold, but the bond was still warm. She was still there, inside his mind, holding on, even as space pulled them apart. Don't let go, he thought. I'm not, she replied in that moment. A new signal broke through, not from the ships, not from the satellite, from the bond itself. A burst of pure energy, old, forgotten, forbidden. And the warships froze there. Engines shut down, weapons powered off, lights blinked out. Something ancient had awakened. Keeper 9's voice returned. Emergency failsafe detected. The bond has triggered a legacy protocol. Peace override engaged. In orbit, silence fell. Across both fleets, soldiers paused, generals stared, and down below, on every screen, the face of a young human boy and a Zephyrian girl appeared, holding hands. The world watched, confused and quiet. The war didn't end that second, but it stopped. Ethan floated in the dark. Eyes half closed, Sarah drifted closer, grabbing his hand. "I'm here," she whispered. He didn't answer, but he didn't need to, because the signal had been sent, and now the galaxy had a choice to keep fighting or start listening. They declared Ethan dead on every human channel. They called Sarah a deserter on every Zephyrian screen. But what the galaxy didn't know, what the war machines couldn't predict, was that dead things don't feel. And Ethan was still feeling her heartbeat inside his own mind. The Peacekeeper I had found their drifting bodies after the signal, barely alive, oxygen near zero. But the bond had done something no machine could explain. It had sustained them, weeks passed inside a hidden sanctuary orbiting a forgotten moon. A place once used for peace talks that never happened. Now it became their shelter, and slowly. Their starting point, Ethan sat in silence, watching the news flicker across a broken holoscreen. Every world was asking the same question. Who sent the signal? Who revealed the truth about the war? Who showed the galaxy that everything it believed was a lie? They didn't know it came from a human and an alien, two soldiers who were supposed to kill each other, but chose to understand instead. Sarah entered the chamber, her wounds mostly healed, but her eyes still held the weight of what they'd seen, and the light of what they'd shared. "You're stronger today," Ethan said without looking. "I had to be," she replied, sitting beside him. "They're watching." "Who?" he asked. "Everyone," she whispered. "Even if they don't know who we are." Their bond was different now, not wild or painful like before. It was quiet, stable, steady. More than connection, it was choice. They had shared thoughts, memories, instincts. Now they shared a purpose. "I dreamed last night," Ethan said. "I saw the little girl again." Sarah nodded slowly. "I think she's real." They both remembered the vision inside the pod. The child watching them from the shadows of memory. Not human, not Zephyrian. Something new, born from both. A symbol, or maybe a warning. Keeper 9 entered with soft steps. "I've decoded the final sequence," the AI announced. "The bond is permanent." Ethan looked up. "You mean we'll feel each other's thoughts? Forever?" "No," Keeper 9 said. "Only if you choose it. But the bond now exists as a living code, something the galaxy can't erase." Sarah stood and faced the projection screen. "And we share it," she said firmly. "We give the choice to others." Ethan walked to her side. "If we hide, the war will return. If we speak, we might be hunted or followed," Sarah added. He turned to her and smiled. "For once, I'd rather lead." So they did. The message they sent wasn't loud. It didn't flash with violence or threats. It was a whisper, the kind only a broken heart could hear. "We were enemies," Sarah said, as their first public message played across space. "We were told the other was a monster," Ethan continued. "But we learned the truth," she said. "And we chose something else," he finished. The screen faded into darkness, and the spark spread. Across colonies, soldiers paused. Children asked new questions. Old generals grew silent, and somewhere, deep in the heart of a warship, a commander removed his medals. They weren't heroes, not in the way history writes names in stone. But they were first. The first to bond across war, the first to trust the enemy and find something worth more than victory. Peace didn't come in a single wave. It came like light breaking through cracks. Small, but unstoppable. Months later, As the first human Zephyrian council met in secret, Sarah looked at Ethan and asked, "Do you ever regret it?" He paused, thinking of the blood, the pain, the fear, then thought of her, the bond, the silence between them that never felt empty again. He shook his head. "No," he said softly, "because the war made us enemies, but the bond made us something else." She smiled, tired but real, and together, they walked into the light of a room that was once meant for peace, now finally filled with it.